Just one day to go until the first and most likely only debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. In the run-up to the showdown, both candidates for the U.S. presidency are tied in the polls neck and neck. Harris has made gains since Joe Biden bowed out of the race, but despite Donald Trump's status as a convicted felon, his base remains fiercely loyal. Now, every Monday at 2 p.m. in the run-up to November's election, we'll be focusing on the U.S. election with our Washington correspondent, Fraser Jackson. Fraser, great to see you.
Good to see you.
Welcome back to Paris.
In the flesh.
Tell us, what can we expect from this upcoming debate?
Well, I think all eyes really are going to be on this. This is the first time that Kamala Harris has actually met with Donald Trump face-to-face. It's the first time the two have ever come face-to-face. And all eyes really are going to be on how they interact with each other. And there's been a whole series of discussions around that. Of course, there was a set of rules that was agreed upon when it was Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. Of course, we're going to see all of those rules really still in place for this debate between Harris and Trump. So we're talking no audience. They're not going to be able to bring notes onto set with them. They're also not going to have their microphones live while the other person is talking to kind of cut back on that interruption. And there was some talk that it would have helped Joe Biden during the debate, but it basically came to light during that debate that actually it helped Donald Trump because it made him seem more controlled. So the Harris team has been trying to push back on that to try to get those mics live again so that it could pick up some of Donald Trump's musings, as it were, while she was talking. But ultimately, ABC has not gone for that. There will, however, be a panel of what we're calling a pool, which will be listening to the mics even when they are muted on broadcast. And if there is significant crosstalk, then they will put the mics up. So a bit of a debate on how that's going to work, who that's actually going to work in the favor of as well. I think the voters are going to be looking more at policy this time rather than personality. Of course, it could be argued that's something that's been difficult for Donald Trump to show at times. His showings at the rallies over the course of the last week have been interesting, to say the least. Certain topics that he's been bringing up are factually incorrect, and other things have been completely off topic from the economic message that his campaign wants to hold. Kamala Harris then trying to drill down into that policy, especially the economic policy, which at the moment hasn't been that fleshed out.
Fraser, I just want to talk about the new lease of life the Democrats have gotten after Joe Biden dropped out of the race, because the way things were going, this election was Donald Trump's to win. Then obviously Kamala Harris stepped onto the scene. She had a surge in the polls, but now things are neck and neck, it seems, going into this debate. What was it like being in Washington when Joe Biden dropped out of the race?
It's been a whirlwind couple of months, I think it's fair to say. This is obviously my first presidential election that I've ever covered, but my colleagues that work at places like ABC, CNN and the Daily Mail who've covered many elections before me, all of them keep coming up to me and being like, it is wild that this is your first election cycle that you're covering, because it is not normal at all. If you cast your minds back to June, we kind of thought this was, a relatively done deal. It was going to be a Donald Trump election. And then, especially after the Waco assassination attempt, all journalists, I think, said, that's it, it's sewn up and it's done. And then we went into the RNC. The mood there was extremely celebratory. They were basically having a giant party for 4 days. They thought it was their election to lose, and indeed it was at that point. And then the end of July, Joe Biden drops out of that race after that disastrous debate performance, and the entire world has been turned on its head. We are now in the middle of a whirlwind where Kamala Harris has had to basically bolt the wings onto the plane while she's at 33,000 feet. This has never been done in the history of the American political system. And we as journalists are basically trying to stay ahead of it and keep playing catch up as well. So it's been a fascinating time to try to get a handle on how to cover it. I think there's a certain sense that we're all just kind of doing the best that we can and trying to maintain some sense of normality while this all goes on.
How important are debates? Because it seems that because the two candidates are neck and neck in the polls, that there's very little that can sway voters now.
I think debates hold a big part to play. If you look at the impact that the last debate had, for example, you could argue that it's been the biggest debate of all time because it led to one candidate effectively dropping out of the race. Mainly, though, I think most people don't really see Kamala Harris, and most politicians really, in an unscripted format. Donald Trump is a bit of a different beast. He tends to go off script a lot when he's at his rallies. But it's an opportunity for middle America to see these candidates on prime time for a whole hour and a half, unscripted, with nothing to rely on. So I think they can kind of, get down to the heart of what these candidates are about and who they are as well, especially when their positions and their past as well are pushed and challenged by both the moderators and the people out there again. So it's an important time.
Fraser, of course, we know in the aftermath of the last election, Donald Trump sowed doubt in the whole process. When you speak to journalists, are there concerns that he may not accept the outcome of the next vote?
Well, I think Donald Trump's already been sowing those seeds again this time round. You know, that he's said many times about the vote being rigged and to not go for early voting because that's all rigged as well. And that is also something that his campaign itself has been trying to battle with, because they've actively this time round been trying to get people out to early vote because they're trying to counteract that massive normally democratic swing that is pushed by early voting. It's mainly Democrats who do vote early. So there's a bit of a conflicting message there from Donald Trump in his campaign, but that has kind of been par for the course so far. But it is really something that we're having to watch closely, because Donald Trump has, of course, got a history of this, and then that his whole remarks last time led to the January 6th, attack on the Capitol, which is still being played out in the American courts now. So it is definitely a worry and something that Joe Biden is likely keeping an eye on as well.
I want to talk about how Donald Trump in the past has managed to pick these attack lines on whoever he's up against, Sleepy Joe, Crooked Hillary, what have you. When it comes to pinning down Kamala Harris, he struggled a bit. I know he's now calling her Comrade Kamala, and obviously mispronouncing her name intentionally. It's difficult for him to go after a woman of color, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that really is also why this debate is going to be so interesting as well. If you look at the way he acted during his interview with the National Association of Black Journalists, that was something which was quite shocking to a lot of journalists. That was when he came out with the line that Kamala Harris suddenly became a black person, and that was quite shocking. Now, I think the Harris campaign really is playing this in the best way possible. Donald Trump is somebody who loves political oxygen. He loves being the center of the headlines, and I think it really set him for a tailspin in the wake of Joe Biden stepping out of the race, that Kamala Harris became center stage, and he didn't really know how to handle that. So he's getting the headlines back slightly, but Kamala Harris is not giving him the time of day. If you look at that CNN interview she did, Dana Bash asked her about that moment in the NABJ interview where she said, "Same old tired playbook, next question." I think that is the way that she has to play Donald Trump, because if you engage and if you go for him...
To justify yourself, yeah, exactly.
To justify yourself, and then, he is somebody... He's a master of public opinion. He's a master showman. He's been in TV for years. He knows how to play the stage. So you have to kind of come at it with a different playbook if you're trying to beat him at his own game, as it were. And I think Kamala Harris will be hoping that her past life as a prosecutor will definitely aid her in that.
Fraser, thank you very much. Fraser Jackson. There. Now we will be broadcasting the U.S. presidential debate live here on France 24. It will be airing at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday. That's 3 a.m. Central European Time.